As the situation in the Pacific escalates, the alliance between Russia and China becomes the primary concern.
"5,000 years ago, China wasn't a superpower. It wasn't even a single country. It was a patchwork of tribes fighting for survival along one river. Today, it builds more ships than any nation in history, moves more goods than any economy on Earth, and challenges the most powerful country in the world for global control. So how did we get here? How did a handful of farmers on the Yellow River turn into the second largest economy on the planet? This is the story of China's 5,000-year masterplan and why the rest of the world is still trying to catch up. It starts around 3000 BC, along the banks of the Yellow River. Early farmers learned to grow rice and millet, and for the first time, communities stop moving and start building. Villages grow into towns. Towns grow into kingdoms. And by 221 BC, one ruler manages to do something no one else had. He unites all of it into a single empire. To protect his new empire, he starts one of the most ambitious construction projects in human history, the Great Wall of China. Thousands of kilometers of stone and earth, built to keep invaders out and hold the empire together. Over the next centuries, dynasty after dynasty rises. The Han Dynasty opens up trade routes stretching all the way to Europe, the Silk Road. Merchants carry silk, tea, and spices west, and in return, new ideas flow east. And this is where things get interesting. While much of the world is still fighting with swords and spears, China is already inventing the future. Paper. The compass. Gunpowder. The printing press. For inventions that would eventually reshape the entire world, and China had them centuries before anyone else. By the time of the Tang and Song dynasties, Chinese cities are some of the largest and wealthiest on earth. Poets write in candlelit gardens. Scholars debate philosophy. And out in the harbor, something extraordinary is happening. Massive wooden ships, taller than anything Europe would build for another few hundred years, are setting sail across the Indian Ocean. Under the Ming Dynasty, China isn't just a regional power. It's arguably the most advanced civilization on the planet. The Forbidden City rises in Beijing, a palace so vast, so golden, it becomes the literal center of the empire's power. For thousands of years, China isn't chasing the rest of the world. The rest of the world is chasing China. But that's about to change, and fast. By the 1800s, the empire that once led the world starts to crack. Foreign ships arrive on China's coast, not to trade fairly, but to force their way in. Western powers flood Chinese ports with opium, draining silver out of the empire and drugging entire cities. When China's government tries to stop it, foreign warships respond with cannon fire. The result is a series of humiliating defeats. Treaties are signed, not as equals, but as a conquered nation. Foreign countries carve out their own zones inside Chinese cities. For the first time in thousands of years, China isn't in control of its own land. Anger builds. Rebellions break out. And in 1912, the very last emperor of China steps down. Thousands of years of imperial rule gone. But peace doesn't come. Warlords fight for territory. Japan invades in the 1930s, leaving entire cities in ruins. And then a brutal civil war breaks out between two rival movements, each trying to decide what the new China will look like. In 1949, one side wins, and a new government rises over Beijing. But the years that follow are some of the hardest in the country's long history. Attempts to rapidly industrialize the economy backfire, leading to widespread famine. Political campaigns tear through universities, farms, and families. By the late 1970s, China, the same civilization that once invented paper and gunpowder, is one of the poorest countries on earth. The empire that used to lead the world is now struggling just to feed itself. And then, everything changes. In 1978, China's leadership makes a decision that will completely rewrite the country's future. Instead of keeping the economy closed off, they start opening it up just a little, just in a few places. Small fishing villages along the coast are designated as special economic zones, where foreign businesses are allowed to invest for the very first time in decades. One of those villages is called Shenzhen. At the time, it's barely more than farmland in fishing boats. Foreign factories start moving in. Cheap labor, low taxes, and massive government support turn these coastal zones into manufacturing machines almost overnight. Farmers who once worked shared land are now allowed to run their own small businesses. Products stamped "Made in China" start appearing on shelves around the world. Within just a couple of decades, Shenzhen goes from fishing village to a skyline of glass and steel, one of the fastest urban transformations in human history. This wasn't an accident. It was the opening move in what would become a decades-long economic strategy, one By the
designed
year
to turn
2001,
China from the world's
China
factory
officially
floor
joins
into
the
something
World
far
Trade
bigger,
Organization, and the floodgates open completely. Global companies start manufacturing almost everything in China: electronics, clothing, toys, furniture. Ports along the coast become some of the busiest in the world, loading endless rows of shipping containers bound for every continent. In 2008, Beijing hosts the Olympics, a symbolic moment, showing the world a country that's no longer developing, but arriving. Then comes the next phase: technology. China starts investing heavily in high-speed rail, smartphones, solar panels, and telecommunications. Within a few years, it's not just manufacturing other countries' products, it's building its own tech giants, capable of competing directly with Silicon Valley. China also starts investing outside its own borders. Through a massive infrastructure program called the Belt and Road Initiative, it funds railways, ports, and highways across Asia, Africa, and Europe, quietly expanding its economic influence across the entire globe. Its military grows too. New warships. New aircraft. A renewed presence in contested waters like the South China Sea. And its economy, the same one that was one of the poorest on Earth just a few decades earlier, becomes the second largest in the world, trailing only the United States. 5,000 years after the first farmers settled along the Yellow River, China is no longer catching up to the modern world. It's competing to lead it. But this rise hasn't gone unnoticed, and it hasn't gone unchallenged. As China's economy grows, so does concern in Washington. The American government starts placing tariffs on Chinese goods, sparking a trade war that disrupts supply chains on both sides of the Pacific. Factories slow down. Stock markets swing wildly. Farmers and manufacturers on both sides get caught in the crossfire. Technology becomes the new battlefield. Semiconductor chips. The tiny components that power everything from smartphones to fighter jets become one of the most fought-over resources on the planet, with both countries racing to control the supply. And then there's Taiwan, a self-governed island that China claims as its own, sitting at the center of one of the most tense military standoffs in the modern world. Warships patrol nearby waters. Diplomats issue warnings. The entire global economy watches nervously, because a conflict here could ripple through supply chains everywhere. Two of the largest economies on Earth, locked in a rivalry that will likely define the next 50 years, not with armies clashing on a battlefield, but with tariffs, technology, and global influence. From farmers on the Yellow River, to emperors behind the Great Wall, to factories reshaping the modern world, China's story spans 5,000 years, and it's still being written. What started as a handful of villages became an empire. What became an empire nearly collapsed. And what nearly collapsed rebuilt itself into one of the most powerful nations on earth. The question now isn't whether China will keep rising. It's how far this masterplan was always meant to go. If you learned something from this video, subscribe for more deep dives into the history behind today's biggest global powers, and let me know in the comments which country's story we should cover next. 5,000 years ago, China wasn't a superpower. It was a handful of farmers fighting for survival along one river. Today, it builds more ships than any nation in history, and challenges the most powerful country on earth for global control. So how did we get here? It starts around 3000 BC along the Yellow River. Villages grow into kingdoms, and by 221 BC, one ruler unites them into a single empire, protected by the Great Wall of China. Over the centuries, China invents paper, the compass, gunpowder, and the printing press centuries before the rest of the world catches up. But by the 1800s, the empire cracks. Foreign powers force their way in. The last emperor falls in 1912. Wars and famine follow, and by the late 1970s, China is one of the poorest countries on earth. Then, in 1978, everything changes. China's leadership opens the economy just a little, just in a few places. A small fishing village called Shenzhen becomes a symbol of what's coming next. Factories rise. Trade explodes. By 2001, China joins the World Trade Organization, and within a few decades, it becomes the second largest economy on the planet, investing in technology, infrastructure, and influence across the entire globe. This rise hasn't gone unnoticed. Trade wars, tariffs, and tension over Taiwan now define one of the most important rivalries of our time. From farmers on a river, to the world's second largest economy, this is a 5,000-year masterplan that's still being written. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel. And if you want more history and knowledge videos, drop a comment and let me know.